Hey everyone, welcome back to Upfront. I'm your host Isabel.
And I'm your co-host Alex.
We want to thank the MGD department and their awesome crew for hosting our episode today. Today we've got a very special episode where we're diving into the front page, FRCC's very own student newspaper. We're joined by our editors, Abby and Seth. Hi guys.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hi.
So let's kick things off. Let's start by talking about the roots of the front page. Did you guys know that the front page dates back to 1989, where it was born, but its DNA actually goes all the way back to 1976 with the Solar Times, right?
Yeah, that's true. Initially, the student newspaper here was called the Solar Times, named after the solar panels that were on the roof when this building was built. And that was a big part of the school's identity back then. And then in 1989, they merged the Solar Times and the staff newsletter to create the front page. And
Yeah, the mission of our paper is to give a voice to our diverse student body. We want to tell stories, but not just any stories. We want to share your stories. So with that, talking about stories, let's talk about a plot twist that happened in 2016. We went digital. Do you guys have any thoughts about that?
yeah, I mean, the thing with going digital is that, that there are advantages in terms of it's much lower cost. It's more high speed, and that the turnaround time between writing an article, publishing the article, and people being able to see the article is a lot shorter. But there are also disadvantages in terms of your presence on campus is lower, and it's harder to get people to go to a website than it is to get them to pick up a piece of paper. In terms of getting that student engagement,
Right.
And so there's pros and cons, and I understand it's super expensive, right, to print physical issues, and they were printing something like 500 issues
Right.
A month, and that I'm sure cost a lot of money, and so you can definitely understand why they.
So Abby, you're actually joining us from the Larimer campus.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you give us a little bit of insight to what it's been like working for the Reporter, which is now merged into the front page?
Sure, yeah. So, I come from Larimer, and prior to this year, we were our own independent front range Larimer campus newspaper, The Reporter. So that was exclusively an online publication. And so even the idea of being a third publication is something that's pretty new. But after this last year, and Dr. Simpson coming on board with FRCC leadership and the adoption of the one college model, we've merged the Reporter into the front page. So now, rather than having independent campus news papers at each campus, so having the Reporter at Larimer and having the front page at Westminster, we have the front page across all three campuses, working as an integrated college-wide newspaper.
How has that been for you guys at Larimer with the Reporter? Did you guys go through any major changes, or was it easy to merge into the front page?
Yeah, the change actually came at a really nice time. Our staff at the Reporter had really been dwindling down for the past few years. And so we were in need not only of staff, but of leadership, just within the club itself. And so when it came time and when the decision came about to merge with the front page, it actually was, pretty timely. The Reporter had been its own independent publication, publishing about monthly or maybe even only once every 2 months. But now that we're with the front page, we not only have more staff, but we have a lot more support. And so it's been a really positive transition.
Yeah. And Seth is a cool guy to work with. How do you guys work together prior to the merge?
No.
No, there had never previously been any cross-campus collaboration at all.
Yeah.
I think that we acknowledged the existence of one another.
Right.
But even that was pretty minimal. So.
Yeah, and I would say the plan to sort of one collegeify the front page, there was a meeting that was held early in the semester to talk about, what we're going to do and how we're going to sort of go about this process, how the organization is going to be structured. And initially, it was just, we were under the impression that the entire staff from the Reporter was gone, and that we were basically going to have to build up from scratch. And then in the meeting, unbeknownst to me or
Most of us.
Yes,
Yeah.
seemingly anybody else in that meeting, Abby showed up and was like, "Oh yeah, no, I was from the Reporter. I'm still here." I mean, forgotten about. But I mean that worked out really well because I'll say we were on the Boulder campus today trying to get students there to sign up to write for the student newspaper, and it's difficult, to start from scratch on something like that, and so to have a local leader who is already established, who already knows the journalism teachers, some of the journalism students, and is like a competent leader. I think I think that was really a huge help, and I don't think I mean we had what was it, 5 staff members on from almost the very beginning on the Larimer campus, which is just incredible amounts of engagement, and we just couldn't have done that without Abby.
I think the merge really brings this sense of unity for sure. We feel more connected to one another as a campus, and it's something to look forward to in our near future as we evolve as one student newspaper. And just when you thought print was dead, we published our first edition of the Half Page, our student magazine. Up until now, we didn't have anything like that present on campus, or at least not for several years. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the magazine presents a really excellent opportunity for student engagement and just student readership in the paper. Just today we had student club and organization fair, and a lot of the folks who came up to our table were really interested in reading the paper, but like Seth mentioned previously, it's one thing to get someone to go to a website, but it's another thing just to hand them a piece of paper and say, read this right now. And so I think it's been a really useful tool just to kind of get people in the door when it comes to the paper. We of course want people to subscribe to read weekly, but it's a nice opportunity for them to just understand what the front page is.
So I remember when Seth brought this up in a meeting, and we started looking at different types of producers or publishers that we could use throughout the city and what we could do to get started. And initially we didn't have the capital to get this published professionally like we wanted to, so we had to get creative. And creative we got. We got together as a team and we printed how many?
For the first issue, it was 100, and for the second one, it's 140 because it's going out on all 3 campuses.
Our first edition talked about the difference in cost between in-person and online courses. We also covered a very relevant issue to this year's graduation, which was the change in location.
Or the committee, on deciding how to sort of change graduation to make it more consistent across the campuses, and also address the fact that the First Bank Center, which is where the Westminster campus normally hosts its graduation, the First Bank Center is closing. And so they need a new place to host it. And so they're putting together this committee to sort of decide how to do graduation going forward and changes to make.
Right. This new location would be a lot further, I believe, than the First Bank Center, which is maybe a 20-minute drive from this campus.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that they looked at in that they kind of they actually created a map that shows like where everyone lives in relation to each campus and how far they would have to drive to get to each particular location. And so the location they were considering doing the unified graduation at was the Budweiser Event Center. It seems like, from the people who are on the committee, it seems like they're kind of coming to the conclusion that it's just not super practical. But, there's more information in the second graduation committee article if you're interested.
So make sure to check that out. Seth was really the driving force behind publishing our magazine at the time that we did. And so what can we expect for our magazine? What is your vision for it? And now that we've unified as one team under the front page, what do you think that'll look like for Larimer?
Yeah. I mean, in terms of what the future holds for the magazine, the first issue and the second issue, if you look at them, they're very different, right? The first issue has 2 full articles and a little bit of additional content. And then the second issue has like a part of one article and then links to like 5, I want to say, other articles that we published over the past month or so. And, we're looking at encouraging more student organizations to get involved. We want to get advertisements for clubs in the magazine. We kind of want it to be this place that you can go to find out, everything that's happening on campus, so that somebody's, they're sitting at some waiting room like outside the advising center, and they grab this and they find out, here's an article about this, here's an article about this, this club is having this event on this day, and they get this idea of, here's all of the sort of big either events or like structural kind of things that we would talk about in articles. And then we would also have, clubs and student orgs have their info in there, so you could get involved with student organizations.
I think that all sounds amazing. I really wish, that it really does come complete, and I can definitely see that you're, right now the guy that wants to really make it happen. I mean, even just putting together that first magazine, I had that feeling already that the team was already bonding really well, but, putting together the first magazine, it really came to light, and everyone was super excited about it, ready to put it up. And I think, you calculating all the numbers, it just shows that, you're ready to put in the effort to, really make this happen. I want clubs to be featured in there, like you said, when it comes to events, that they are hosting. I think that's obviously a huge, crucial thing. I wanted to get your opinion, though, on the magazine. How do you feel so far about it? And do you see it as a long-term thing? Do you think it can be a long-term thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just to answer your last question there, I mean, I do hope it's a long-term thing. And then in terms of my perspective on it, I think this is the first time, the most recent edition of the magazine that was published was the first time that any Larimer stories have been featured in there. But I think even just in that initial inclusion of Larimer, we saw a greater diversity of stories that were included. And, just on a really elementary level, the people whose stories you're reading are going to be different. You're going to get better perspectives. You're going to get just a wider, more broad idea of what makes up Front Range as a whole institution. So I think as we go forward and, we include club information from Larimer, and we include stories from Larimer as well, I think it'll provide a really nice, complete picture of Front Range, as one institution.
I think including, stories from Larimer, I think has always been a big, thing that I was always really interested in seeing how could we do that. And now since it is there, like you said, all the different perspectives and all the new stuff that are being put out. I mean, everyone they've got ideas constantly going in their head, like, I could write about this and this and this. And it's always so great to see it actually come on paper. So I think it's definitely a huge thing, that's for sure.
Before we wrap up, let's talk about what's coming. We're always on the hunt for new stories, and we want to hear what can we expect from the front page and the half page in the upcoming weeks, months to come.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we want to cover. We're looking at some story ideas. In particular, one that I was thinking about was the student life department actually removed sanitary products from the men's bathroom on the Larimer campus in Blanca Peak. And so I might cover that, or maybe one of your writers would be interested in covering that.
Yeah, and I think just looking, a little more broadly, that like what people can expect going forward is stories that feature, individuals or issues from each of the 3 campuses. As we develop the staff at Boulder and as we build out our staff, both at Larimer and at Westminster, I think readers can really expect to see stories that have to do specifically with Larimer, but then things that have to do with each of the other campuses and, Front Range as a whole. So hopefully it provides, a good, well-rounded picture of Front Range.
And if, like I said, we're always on the hunt for new stories. If somebody had a story that they felt we should cover or that they felt needed to be heard, how would they go about getting in touch with the front page?
Yeah, so on our website, we've got a page. The exact URL is not coming to me, but if you go to our website, there's a page there about submitting an article and sort of the guidelines about, the sort of things that you are allowed to write about and the things you're not. And if you'd like us to cover something as opposed to, you writing about something, you can just send us an email at frontpage@frontrange.edu, and we'll see it. We can't guarantee that we'll cover it, but we'll look into it. Ways.
And I would say along with that, just approach us too. We have offices at Larimer and at Westminster as of now. And so I think, especially if you have a story that you want written, come to us and talk to us about collaborating on it, because we don't want it to just be, our perspective on your story. We want it to be a collaborative effort. So definitely just come approach us.
Right.
Definitely.
Like I said, that's our mission, to cover stories which aren't just stories, they're your stories. So with that being said, that's a wrap. I'd like to thank Abby and Seth for joining us today. Again, the MGD department and their awesome crew for hosting our episode. And make sure to check our website out, the front page, FRCC.com. You can also find us on socials at the front page, FRCC. With that being said, thank you guys for watching.
Yep,
And we'll see
thank you guys.
next time.
Thanks everyone.
However.